Hello everyone, I am Julian Morris with the Channel 5 News. In the headlines, a soft launch for Jungle Bay Spa and Resort this week. Melissa Skerritt condemns violence as a young man from Roseau is murdered. And the Attorney General defends citizens' rights in the debate over electoral reform. The details coming up.
I love the freedom when I'm out there. Simply put, the worries from shore, none of that out there. And it's my daily bread. I learned it from my dad. My dad is one of the senior guys here who catch the biggest fish around here. And he's top with the red snappers. It's a family thing. I'm the only one fishing right now in the family. Just keeping it going. I enjoy bringing them up, man. Sometimes you have a yellowfin tuna, 400 pounds. Man, let me tell you, that's just a joy out there. I enjoy going out there and just holding the big fish. I don't lift weights, I lift fish. The morning of my fishing trip, I would get up, make a little spiced tea. Then I come down here. I have my GPS, which most fishermen are supposed to have that. Normally I prepare the day before, because whenever you go out there, you must have ice. Ice is a must for preservation of the fish. So I always make sure I have everything the day before. My fish represents me, and I bring good quality fish ashore simply because the restaurants themselves, they have to show a quality product. Tourism and agriculture go hand in hand. That's what I think. We're all connected. It's like a big machine, and I'm just so proud to be a part of it. My name is Brandon Carlisle, and tourism is my business.
Here are some tips to reduce mosquito presence in and around your home. Keep water storage containers properly covered. Remove containers that can collect water from your surroundings. Keep garbage bins tightly covered. Pick up your litter and remove all tires from your yard. Keep gutters free of leaves and twigs to prevent stagnant water. Prevent Zika, dengue, and chikungunya. Fight the bite. This is a public service announcement from the Dominica Red Cross.
This message is supported by Flow. First up in the news, the new Jungle Bay Resort and Spa is all set for a soft launching this Saturday. Here is Andrea Louis with a report.
The CBI-funded project sits in Monakuma, Soufriere, and has already begun hosting guests ahead of its soft opening on 1st June. Proprietor of the hotel project, Sam Raphael, says the current guests are part of an entrepreneurial program with the University of Virginia. Raphael says the students have been giving interesting feedback on the rebuild of Jungle Bay Resort and Spa following the destruction to the original property in Dalis from Tropical Storm Erica in 2015.
Things are progressing fairly well. Of course, we get little hiccups here and there, but we're pretty much on stream. We actually have some guests in-house now, some university students that are, but these are special guests. And our regular soft opening guests are going to start coming on the 1st of June. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but that's why it's called a soft opening. Like the last Jungle Bay, we opened with a reality TV group, and we began welcoming guests immediately after that.
An official opening is planned for the property in late June. Raphael pointed out there are finishing touches to add to Phase 1 of the facility scheduled to open this Saturday.
We're now transitioning the site from a construction site, at least the first phase, to a functioning hotel, which requires some changes. The construction team, we've got less noise and certain things, and certain activities, working hours have to change and so on. We're still doing a lot of little finishing things that we will be doing. For instance, the kitchen, the food and beverage appliances, that's coming in late, we just learned, so we have to make the adjustment for that. So the food and beverage area is one that we have to bring up, and just a lot of little finishing details, little fountains here. The landscaping is a big deal.
Raphael says works will be ongoing to ensure Phase 2 of the project will be completed and open to guests a few months down the line.
In the second phase, we want to add some additional services, a second restaurant, for instance, because we will have quite a number of guests when all the villas are complete and certain things. So we'll just be rolling these things out. But the start is very important, regardless. An imperfect start. I don't believe that you should hold out until everything is perfect. You shouldn't be too premature, but you should get out there and then fine-tune your product, because no matter how good you think your product is in this business, my experience is that you're going to have to keep working at it. So we open, in the process of opening and in the process of learning and fine-tuning our product.
Phase 1 of the new Jungle Bay Resort and Spa in Monakuma, Soufriere will consist of 30 rooms, a restaurant, health spa, administrative block, and public facilities. Andrea Louis, Channel 5 News.
Public officers have been advised to use the training opportunities made available to them to boost productivity within the public sector. We go back to Andrea Louis for more.
The word of caution came from Secretary to the Cabinet Steve Farrell during the opening ceremony of the Strategic Planning Week organized by the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development on Monday. This workshop is the third budget-related activity to prepare departments for the 2019-2020 budget cycle and is aimed at implementing various development goals. Farrell says the number of opportunities available to the public servants is not reflected in the levels of productivity and performance in the sector.
It is becoming more and more evident that the volume of training programs attended at the national, regional, and international level by officers within a wide cross-section of the public service has not quite measured up to a commensurate level of increase in performance and productivity within the public sector. These training comprise a host of workshops, seminars, working sessions, attachments, and long-term study, introducing new techniques and methodologies that should make our government operations second to none.
Farrell commended the public servants who go above and beyond the call of duty, but challenged senior officers to investigate the root cause of the below-expected performance in the rest of the public service.
But when measured by the quality of work, reports, presentation, and overall output made as part of the workings of the government systems, many fall short. It would be interesting to carry out an exercise this week as part of your program, if some time would be permitted, to examine why is this. The sad fact remains, however, that you and I, for the foreseeable future, also share and accept responsibilities and carry the burden and extra work for those among us who choose, sadly so, to underperform and give, quite frankly, less of the best.
The Cabinet Secretary implored public officers to renew their commitment to the job as they work to move the country forward.
We should examine our reflective roles and the nature of our contractual relationship that we have with the state. Not with me, not with the minister, not with the prime minister, a contractual obligation with the state. And examine further to what extent that we as officers deliver on those obligations. It is my hope that the discussions of this strategic planning week will provide the alignment required to visibly link national priorities of government to the specific task of each individual officer.
The Strategic Planning Week is being hosted at the Goodwill Parish Hall and comes to an end this Friday.
Senior Counsel Anthony Astafan has accused the leader of the opposition, Lennox Linton, of making misleading statements on important issues discussed during last week's panel discussion on electoral reform. Mr. Astafan believes Mr. Linton was inaccurate on multiple counts. Mr. Astafan says Mr. Linton's comments to the effect that Dominica had a system of vote where you live is not factual. Here's Mr. Linton as he made that point at last week's panel discussion organized by the Electoral Commission.
We vote in Dominica for government of Dominica to run the affairs of Dominica for Dominicans living in Dominica. If we want a government of Dominica to run the affairs of Dominica for Dominicans living in Dominica and all around the world, then we must change our laws. Under the existing laws, we have a vote where you live system. Citizens who are entitled to vote become qualified to vote by being resident in a particular polling district in Dominica for at least 3 months prior to registration. A violation of the residency requirement by being absent from Dominica for more than 5 years disqualifies that citizen from being on the list of eligible voters.
Mr. Astafan totally disagrees with Mr. Linton's view on that matter.
The leader of the opposition said that in Dominica we have the vote where you live law. That is factually and legally false because Section 27(2) of the House of Assembly Elections Act at page 20 says, every person whose name appears under the official list of electors for any polling district shall be entitled to vote in that polling district. Here comes the important words, notwithstanding that he is not resident in that polling district upon polling day. One of the fundamental reasons why the legislation made provisions for you to vote in a constituency, even if you're not resident, because the same law passed by Parliament provides for you to be overseas and be entitled to vote once you're not challenged on an objection for not having visited Dominica at least once in the 5 preceding years. Now, the leader of the opposition made no mention of that. In fact, he completely ignored it and misrepresented the law.
Mr. Astafan says the opposition leader was wrong again in his reference to Halsbury's laws when speaking on what constitutes bribery.
We have seen huge sums spent on bringing in foreign artists to provide free entertainment, to corruptly influence votes. This has happened under the watch of an electoral commission that refuses to act to prevent fraudulent manipulation of the electoral system, even though it is fully aware of the applicable laws against these practices. Halsbury's Laws of England says that the payment or promise of payment to a voter of his traveling expenses on condition expressed or implied that he would vote for a particular candidate is bribery.
Senior Counsel Astafan says Mr. Linton was again misleading in using Halsbury's laws selectively.
The other egregious misrepresentation of the law and the facts was his reference to Halsbury's. Mr. Linton consistently read the exception, which is that the payment or promise of payment to a voter of his traveling expenses on the condition, importantly, on the condition, express or imply that he would vote for a particular candidate. That's all he read repeatedly. But the Halsbury's Laws, 4th edition, volume 15, at paragraph 770, page 421, states the principal legal position immediately preceding the words that Mr. Linton used, which are, these words are, the unconditional payment or promise of payment to a voter of his travel expenses is not bribery. At no time did Mr. Linton draw the attention of the audience to the most important words of the paragraph of Halsbury's definition of bribery, nor did he refer to the Dominican.net article published on Saturday, December 12, 2009, where Sir Brian Alleyne is quoted as saying that motive is important. Says, according to Sir Brian Alleyne, what would be illegal is bribery as defined. Valuable consideration is consideration that confers, etc. Paying for an airline ticket to Dominica would fall within the definition. if the motive to induce an elector to vote, that to my mind would amount to bribery. The leader of the opposition never referred to the issue of motive. And in my view, on these two factors, and there are many others, but we don't have time to discuss all of it in a news broadcast, were fundamentally false, deceptive, and dishonest, and misled the audience in the hall and at home who listened to it via radio.
Another young man has died following what police say was an altercation on Kennedy Avenue on Sunday morning. Police say Gaf Jean-Jacques was stabbed by a young man with whom he had an altercation a few minutes before the incident. The 24-year-old from Bath Road was rushed to Princess Margaret Hospital, where he died from his injuries while being attended to by doctors. The Prime Minister's wife, Melissa Skerritt, has condemned the act of violence. In a Facebook post, Mrs. Skerritt, who is also the DLP's candidate for Rosa Central, says hearing the devastating news of her friend's senseless murder brought her to tears. Mrs. Skerritt says, quote, "Garth, I truly cannot believe that you are gone. Despite your trying circumstances, you always wore an infectious smile. I always used you as an example when I was unjustly criticized for reaching out to the street boys. You were one of the young men who gave me hope, and so I persevered." She goes on, "You spoke of your desire to make something of yourself. You said, 'Ma'am, I don't like the street life. Help me get back into school.'" Mrs. Skerritt says the young man had just gotten a new job, and he would begin school in September. She says she was very proud of him. Mrs. Skerritt says, "Let's not judge, but rather take time to understand our youth. Many admit that they did not choose this life. Many are in these circumstances due to broken homes and bad decisions." You are watching Channel 5 News. More after this.
Maladie HIV et bien maladie sexuelle. Si ou pas protéger corps là ou ka ni sexe avec plusieurs monde, ça kay mette la vie ou en gros danger. Ou ka exposer tout partenaire au poison et que tant ki ka vini avec maladie. Servi yo condom chaque fois ou ka ni sexe. Changer qui est important pour découvrir maladie à bonheur ou ça vivre en bonne santé même si ou ni maladie HIV. Pour responsabilité, protéger corps et puis les autres. Examiner corps. Aider du bout si même maladie HIV et l'autre maladie sexuelle.
Here are some tips to reduce mosquito presence in and around your home. Keep water storage containers properly covered. Remove containers that can collect water from your surroundings. Keep garbage bins tightly covered. Pick up your litter and remove all tires from your yard. Keep gutters free of leaves and twigs to prevent stagnant water. Prevent Zika, dengue, and chikungunya. Fight the bite. This is a public service announcement from the Dominica Red Cross.
This message is supported by Flow. Thank you for staying with us. Attorney General Levi Peter says any changes on or reform in the electoral system must ensure that the fundamental rights of every citizen and a person qualified to vote is protected. The Attorney General has also addressed suggestions that the Electoral Commission should go ahead and issue voter identification cards, as it already has the resources to do so. Addressing a panel discussion on electoral reform last week, the AG says it's not as simple as that.
You can't issue cards unless you have the legal authority to do so. Section 19 of the Registration of Electors Act, Chapter 203, which is the existing legislation, does not give the authority to the Commission, the electoral officer, Chief Elections Officer, or any other person to issue identification cards to all and sundry on a mandatory basis. What do I mean by that? If the Chief Elections Officer and or the Commission chose, as the Chief Elections Officer can do under Section 19 now, to issue identification cards, they could not compel any one of us in here to subscribe to that process. In other words, they couldn't compel you to provide a photograph, they couldn't compel you to provide biometric or other data, and therefore the card would not be in universal use. It would be some people would be using it and some wouldn't, and that would be a recipe for chaos. That is one of the principal reasons why you need an amendment to the legislation to make it abundantly clear and legally sound that identification cards are required in accordance with law, and therefore each and every person who wants to exercise their franchise would have to subject themselves to providing a photograph or having their photograph taken and providing the other biometric and other data that's necessary.
The Public Service has been challenged to promote and market Dominica's goal of becoming the first climate-resilient nation in the world. Minister for Planning and Economic Development Miriam Blanchard was speaking to senior government officials on Monday at the start of a strategic planning week.
Each of us must promote and market the first climate resilient nation in the world. Each of us must promote and market the first climate resilient nation vision, not sometimes, but all the time. Each of us must have sufficient information about the NRDS and SDGs that will enable us to identify a role for ourselves. Everyone must play a part in national development.
Blanchard, who was speaking on behalf of the Prime Minister, pledged the government's support towards developing Dominica's resilience to the effects of climate change.
We as a government will continue to weigh the trade-offs and make the difficult but necessary choices to fund the investments needed to drive sustainable growth, foster social development, promote good health, reduce poverty, and build resilience. As we take the next steps, I wish to point out the several efforts of this government to accelerate the implementation of the SDGs. Some of these include, but are not limited to, the restructuring of ministries, the establishment of CREED, expansion of social protection programs, supporting small and medium-sized enterprises, building on disaster and climate risk management efforts post-Maria, and strengthening the legal and policing the environment.
Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development, Gloria Joseph, told public officers they are in a unique position to help build Dominica's resilience.
Your being here today signifies the critical importance that you are placing on planning for effective delivery. We are provided with a unique opportunity to transform the economic and social landscape of Dominica as together we work towards the attainment of climate and social resiliency. The vision to build the world's first climate resilient country is not one which will be achieved if we continue with the modus operandi. The doing things in the usual fashion will not move us closer to our goal.
The Strategic Planning Week is being held under the theme Implementing the Global, National and Sectoral Development Goals. And Caribbean nationals in the United States are reportedly getting jittery over the prospects that Donald Trump is less than 2 years away from a possible second term as president. Caribbean Today is reporting, however, the uncertainty that has dogged immigrants in the U.S. overall during Trump's presidency could become an opportunity for them to shift into a more active political mode. The immigration climate is not something that they believe will be beneficial to them. Undocumented people are now going underground because of Trump openly pushing to go up against undocumented immigrants. Caribbean nationals have also been offended by what they regard as the president's lying and divisive rhetoric concerning race. Caribbean nationals could fight back politically by seeking electoral representation.
Here are some tips to reduce mosquito presence in and around your home. Keep water storage containers properly covered. Remove containers that can collect water from your surroundings. Keep garbage bins tightly covered. Pick up your litter and remove all tires from your yard. Keep gutters free of leaves and twigs to prevent stagnant water. Prevent Zika, dengue, and chikungunya. Fight the bite. This is a public service announcement from the Dominica Red Cross.
This message is supported by Flow. To end the news, a look again at the headlines. A soft launch for Jungle Bay Spa and Resort this week. That will take place on Saturday. Melissa Skerritt condemns violence as a young man is murdered in Roseau. And the Attorney General defends citizens' rights in the debate over electoral reform. Feel free to contact us at news@mapping2k4.com. You may access our past newscasts on our YouTube channel. On behalf of the production team, I am Julian Morris. Thank you for watching. Join us tomorrow.